Gold for the United States at the Olympics in Tokyo for men's basketball. France just turned it over too many times. Rudy Gobert, 16-8, but he missed 7 free throws. He was in tears when it was all over. 4th gold for the United States. France has never won the gold. They've won 2 silvers in this event. Kevin Durant, I mean, yeah, he looked like the best player on the planet. He was definitely the best player in Tokyo, and he's been the best at these Olympic games over his career. There have been 5 29-point games all time in gold medal games, and Kevin Durant now has 3 of them. Speaking of golden, look who's here. George Sedano. George, I got a little tight at the end. And you're a hoops junkie. I got to feel like you might have been uncomfortable. Why was the United States unable to put France away?
All right, so I was standing up in the green room, and I started to pace, okay? All of a sudden, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot of the Brooklyn Nets is hitting shots. All of a sudden, Frank Ntilikina hit a 3. I'm like, he's not even a three-point shooter. Scared me a little bit, but thank you, Kevin Durant, as you mentioned, because when Damian Lillard missed those free throws, again, the heart started to race a little bit, but Durant was able to ice the game. Great job by Jason Tatum earlier in the game as well, giving him support. And they really needed that second guy, and Tatum really later in this tournament was able to kind of become that second guy to support Durant.
The second guy figured to be Booker or Lillard. Lillard especially.
Right.
Why wasn't? What happened to Lillard?
Well, it looked like Dame was heating up in that third quarter, and we were getting ready for Dame time. You know, I love me some Dame time, Neil.
Yeah.
But then those free throws, it was strange. It was like an out-of-body experience for him. But give them credit on the defensive end, Neil. Everybody talks offense. Nobody talks defense. Defensively, whether it was Bam Adebayo, whether it was Kevin Durant with a block, whether it was Draymond Green, they were able to lock down on that end.
Set the defensive presence right off the bat. The first possession for France, shot clock violation.
Right.
All right. What did you really learn from these Olympics? So, I mean, it's just a one-off. It's for the gold. Is there a bigger picture here that we need to talk about?
Okay, clearly the world is catching up, right? So because of that, we need to treat this with a little more respect as far as the process is concerned.
The process? It's always about the process.
Not that Philly process. Not that process. Different kind of process. Now, if you remember back in 2008 in Beijing, after the previous embarrassment in 2004 when they won the bronze medal, that team committed for 2 years to compete in those 2008 Olympics. That was Kobe Bryant, Jason Kidd, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that we've kind of gotten away from that. I understand these guys have a lot of stuff going on outside of basketball. Sometimes injuries play a factor, but I do think we need to throw these teams together with a little time to create some cohesiveness.
And how do you go about doing that?
I just think that the commitment needs to be longer than just several weeks or several months.
All right. Speaking of a commitment, Kevin Durant getting ready to sign a $198 million extension with the Brooklyn Nets. That'll be sometime after Saturday, but in the near future. I don't know how many days it is until the tip-off. You probably do. Is it too early to talk about the Nets being the prohibitive favorite to win it all next year?
Well, it's approximately 10 weeks, not that I'm counting. But listen, $198 million, man. You know, that's a nice chunk of change to go to. But they are the prohibitive favorite. It's basically them and the Lakers right now. And depending on which sports book you go to, you know, if you're into that kind of stuff, my guess is that Brooklyn will be the favorite at least going into this thing, barring health. And we saw last season was catastrophic from a health perspective. As far as all-star caliber players, those guys missed almost 20% of their games, the most that we've seen in NBA history. So I think that we're going to get back on a more regular schedule. I think those guys from Brooklyn will get their rest. Clearly, the Lakers will get their rest. And in theory, we'll get that collision course. But, yeah, I'm thinking Brooklyn at least the early favorite at the moment.
I think Patty Mills, huge pickup for Brooklyn as well.
No doubt. I mean, you're talking about a champion in Patty Mills and a guy with tons of experience, for sure.
Starting to manifest itself there with Team USA.
Well, look, Michael, they've got challenges for sure. I mean, 3 of their players, including Drew Holiday, who was the best player in the fourth quarter of this game, arrived less than 24 hours before the start of the game. And obviously, they've only had about 10 practices. But having said that, they're up 7 points in this game with 4 minutes to go with a handful of Hall of Famers on their roster. You got to close that game. And I know that there's talk about lack of cohesion, lack of chemistry, about how players on the opposition seem to rise up when they're playing for their country. That's all true, but that does not excuse the way they played in this game. I'll excuse the losses they had in the exhibition games. This was an important game. They knew this was going to be hard going in, and they did not execute, especially the guys that we consider all NBA players.
All right, so here's the deal. We own basketball around the world. That's how Americans feel. And we also like to put blame on someone when something goes wrong. So how much of this right now, Wendy, granted it's just one loss, but it is a loss nonetheless, goes on the players themselves or what Team USA did in constructing this roster?
Well, I will say that the French completely, if the French shoppers' game plan completely outclassed Greg Popovich's lineup in this game. Pop decided to put a small team together. He started Draymond Green and Bam Adebayo, sort of two small, agile big men, and they reacted by inserting two of their 3 7-footers for the entire second half, and the Americans had trouble dealing with it. They just outmaneuvered Pop in this one, but just saying this was a roster issue, just saying this was a strategic issue, that's not really fair. Again, you have Durant and Lillard and Tatum. You have a couple of guys actually do what they do best, what they're paid $100 million for, and the U.S. wins this game at the end of the day.
So again, they lose. As Bucci just said, they've never won a gold medal when they've lost a game during the Olympics. The question now is, how will they respond in that next game? Brian Windhorst is in Tokyo. He'll be there the whole time here with us on SportsCenter.
Flopped in its first game in Tokyo, falling to France 83-76. France was led by NBA players Evan Fournier and Rudy Gobert. Now, the U.S. got a combined 21 points from Damian Lillard and Kevin Durant. Durant fouled out of the game. The loss is the first for the U.S. men at an Olympics since 2004. The team will look to rebound from today's defeat when it takes on Iran on Wednesday in another pool play game. We now welcome in Brian Windhorst. He is in Tokyo covering Team USA. And I know the players have spoken now after the game. How is this team reacting to this loss?
Well, they're not happy about it. Damian Lillard, I think, was sober about it and basically said, when you come play for Team USA, you don't expect something like this to happen. You don't expect to play this way. You don't expect guys who are NBA stars to miss shots and not execute like this. I don't care who you're playing. Greg Popovich took a different tact, crediting the opponent, which is fine. But even in a game where Kevin Durant has foul trouble, Kevin Durant goes to the bench and you come back with Jason Tatum, an all-NBA player. So obviously the French played well in this game, but the Americans did not execute, did not get it done. And quite frankly, they were just flat out outplayed. It was not because they were tired. It was not because the French have some sort of special magic. It was because they got out executed. And that is not something we're used to seeing from the national team that is unfortunately becoming more regular over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you just look at that imbalance of scoring. Drew Holiday with 18. I mean, he's trying his best to make it happen. Bam Adebayo with 12, but Devin Booker, 4. I mean, there's so many different things that you could point to. But what is the team saying is the biggest area for improvement moving forward as they now have their next game in just a few days?
Yeah, so they've got to worry about consistency. They just don't play a consistent game from start to finish. And the reason that's really a problem is because this is a 40-minute game. And I know that they can say that and they can re-emphasize it over and over. But when you're used to a 48-minute game, you can sometimes let your guard down on defense to give up a possession here or there. You just can't do that in international basketball. And that was one of the things that caught them tonight, because this was a game that they were ahead double digits by 2 different times, and with 4 minutes to go, are up by 8 points. You've got to close that game. And so their consistency is what they're talking about. They do have a couple of days of practice here. They're not, penalized in any way here. If they beat Iran on Wednesday and the Czech Republic on Saturday, they will advance to the medal round. But that's not important right now. What's important is them looking like NBA All-Stars that they are.
Yeah, foul trouble is something that they're going to try to clean up. Kevin Durant fouled out, obviously.